Hey everyone, Gill Gross here, and welcome to the 2025 Australian Open second round show. 2 days of tennis. I'm going to go through everything that I thought was important or notable. I'll go through a lot of matches. I won't spend as long on the matches that I'm going to be discussing as I usually do, but I'm going to try to get some tactical points in there and just give you whatever perspective I can. My goal here, because I like to be detailed and in depth, but even if I'm incomplete in my analysis, I'm at least going to try to tell you something interesting that is original in some way, as much as I can control. So that's the goal here. Let me just tease stuff so you guys know what's coming. We'll talk about Fonseca first, losing to Lorenzo Sonego. Then we'll go to Rune over Berrettini. Some quick hitters that I won't tease. We will do FAA blowing the 2-0 lead against Davidovich Fokina. Djokovic against Faria. A little bit of stuff on that. Mensik upsets Ruud. We'll talk about that. Again, there are some matches that I won't tease that I will hit on. Hurkacz upset by Kecmanovic. Shapovalov, he loses to Musetti, and Shelton beats Pablo Carreno Busta. Those are some of the things that I'll get into, but I did leave some out. Let's start with a man who was the story of the first round in Joao Fonseca, losing his second round match to Lorenzo Sonego. I'm going to start here because the discourse around Fonseca is going to be very explosive. Okay, it was explosive after the first round. It's going to be even more explosive now that he lost his next match. So I know I've said this before, but I literally don't think it can be said enough. Fonseca is not going to dominate this year. He is going to lose a lot this year. It is not going to be easy for him because it's easy for nobody in their first year on tour, especially given, how young Joao is. And again, I like to go back and look at precedent. And first full year on the main tour. And there's no hard definition for that, right? So what's a full year on the main tour? But I basically said if you played 2 challengers or less over the course of a full year, then you played a full year on the main tour. Let's go by that definition. Alcaraz finished 2021, ranked 32. Sinner finished 2020, ranked 37. Djokovic, it's a bit of a tough one because in 2005, he did play, I believe, 11 main tour events versus 4 challengers. But if we call 2006 Novak's first full year on the main tour, he finished 16 in the world. 2004 Nadal, he finished 51. 2000 Federer finished 29. So all of them, and obviously we're looking at the very, very elite best talents that we've seen. Obviously not going back too far, but just in recent times. All of these guys have fallen between 15 in the world and 50 in the world, essentially. That is kind of the range. So if Joao Fonseca finishes 2025 top 40, that is a resounding success. I just think it's so important to set expectations. And that doesn't change anything about how good he might be or can be in the future, how good I think he's going to be in the future, right? So it's not backtracking at all. It's just to say that 2025 is too soon. All right. This was a close match, a 5-setter against Sonego. Here's how tight the margins were in the 5th. Fonseca had a chance to go up a break. He had a break point in the 5th. He airmailed a backhand return. It was pretty returnable. On the next point, he very nearly earned a second opportunity to break, but Sonego clipped the back edge of the baseline on a +1 forehand. The game that Lorenzo broke he hit two outstanding forehand passing shots. One of them was probably a 10%, 5% shot. Then the other was probably close to maybe like a 30 or 40% shot, so a little bit more makeable, but he still hit it absolutely flush. Just really great shot making by the Italian there in that game to break in the fifth set, and he would end up taking it. So I did feel like it was kind of on a razor's edge. But I also think that Fonseca was clearly way below his level in this match compared to his first round match, really from start to finish. And that isn't shocking, I don't think. I think there's a lot of reasons why you could have suspected that in some ways, given the pressure, the psychological dynamic, the craziness that I'm sure the 24 hours in the lead up to the match was for Fonseca. I don't know. Maybe he did block everything out really well, but it's not easy to do. It was windy. I want to throw that out there, and I'll talk more about that later. Obviously, that's the same for both players. But in terms of just watching Fonseca and thinking, oh, wow, like the ball striking doesn't look as pure, or the offense isn't coming off as consistently or as easily. I mean, wind is going to factor in there. But I think the biggest thing, or one of the biggest things, is just mileage on the legs. Because if you ask me what are Joao Fonseca's weaknesses right now, what is not up to par? Why might he struggle relatively in 2025 and not surge into the top 20? Well, physically, he is a boy. He is not a man yet. He is a boy. And I was thinking after he lost the second set, okay, this is going to be a very different experience for Joao. We haven't seen him play a long match in a very long time. Obviously, he came through qualifying, so he played 3 matches and then a best of 5, and now a second round match. Even if you go to when he won the Canberra Challenger, he won the Next Gen Finals, or he won the Lexington Challenger at the end of last year. These are quick matches. He's winning in straight sets. His endurance, I've never really seen it tested until now. But as I was thinking that, I said, okay, well, let's see, what are we actually working with here? So I went to Tennis Abstract and I sorted his matches by length. It turns out that in matches that have gone over 2 hours and 28 minutes, Fonseca, including this loss against Sonego, is now 1-8. He is 1 win, 8 losses in matches that have surpassed the 2 hour, 28 minute mark. So there's your answer. There's your answer for what, Joao is going to need to develop. His endurance is not where it needs to be. And I'd say it goes beyond that. The strength in his legs are not where it needs to be. The sharpness of his footwork is not where it needs to be. His speed around the court, just his ability to cover the court in general, is not quite where it needs to be right now. And of all the attributes here, mental, technical, everything, it's really just the lower body that I think is Fonseca's weakest point right now. So that is normal. Again, he's 18. Boy, not man. Now, everybody's different. Alcaraz at 18, a little bit further along. Sinner? No. Sinner not. So it just changes, right? There were some positives for Fonseca, all right? Really clutch serving in the first set. Competed extremely hard. Didn't fold in the fourth, even though he was quite out of sorts, quite poor, looking a little bit weary in the third set. But he came back strong in the fourth. He played with a lot of energy. And despite the adversity, he still embraced the competition. I've never really watched Fonseca struggle before. This was the first time I watched him struggle. And I think he handled it really well mentally. So that was good to see. Sonego, excellent. Serve +1, dominant. I don't have that much more to say on him, but it was a really great performance. Let's go to Rune and Berrettini. I was really excited for the second round match. Career high 4 versus career high 6. Playing in the second round. That's pretty good stuff. I thought it delivered. This was high quality, high drama. I was thinking as we went down the stretch in the fourth set that no matter what happens, I didn't know who was going to win. I think both players should be pretty proud or pretty happy with their level. I don't know, but proud might be a little far if you lost the match and you're Matteo Berrettini. But I thought it was a really high-level contest. And the key for Rune getting through was a willingness to work to get the ball in play and keep the ball in play. Like a commitment to that. A dedication to return of serve and defense that I haven't seen in a long time. I think Rune's returning was awesome. I mean, you look at how he handled the Berrettini serve, and you look at his break numbers the last 2 years, and you're thinking, how in the world? How in the world is a guy with that ability on return not able to break serve, which has been the case really for the last year and a half. But he was seeing Matteo serve well. He never let it take over. I do think he moved back a little bit more than he normally does, which is something that I've really wanted to see for a long time for Holger. And not only did he move back, but he scaled back the intention. Because it just seems like sometimes that Holger is trying to be offensive on a first serve return. And I'm sorry, this is men's tennis. This is the highest level of professional men's tennis. These serves are too good. There is a reason why the great returners in the game aim up the middle and normally are looking to get to neutral. They're not looking to get on attack, maybe on a second serve return. But I thought Holger's mentality was dialed in that way. And then the commitment to defending. And the thing with Holger as a defensive player, I have seen Rune's defense look horrendous. I have seen it look elite. I have seen both of those things. It's his attitude. It comes down to his attitude and how much he's committing to it. And it was good, especially when it mattered in this match. And I'm gonna throw some nuance in here for everything I'm about to say. But let's just focus on, I think the parts that were going well for Holger when they went well and ultimately powered him to this victory. And that's return and defense. He was down a mini break in the fourth set tiebreak, 5-3. What did he do? He blocked a backhand return deep. Berrettini had an aggressive +1, but Rune dropped back deep in the court and chased down a ball deep into his backhand corner, sliced it, ludicrous, low, biting, slice, passing shot that got Berrettini to miss the volley. Just a level of shot making that you see from Rune, and it's special. It's absolutely special. Next mini break, block return deep in the court. This time a more manageable, less highlight reel, open stance backhand neutralization. But still, he played it high, cross court, lots of net margin, and Berrettini was a little overzealous trying to make it a aggressive forehand inside in. Shot wasn't really there, so it was Matteo forcing it and making the error, and that's how Rune got the mini break. I also saw disciplined patterns offensively. I saw so much serve to Berrettini's forehand, Matteo chips middle, Rune hits an approach shot to the backhand, and now he's at the net and Matteo's hitting a backhand pass. That's what you want. And you need to be calculated and regimented and organized in your head, which is something that we all know Holger has lacked, and I saw more of that in this match. I saw him playing patient and solid in the baseline rallies with his trading. And when playing patient and solid, I think one thing that particularly worked was playing slow into the Berrettini backhand. Because that Matteo backhand, it likes pace. It wants pace. It does not want to generate. It really struggles. Berrettini really struggles when he has to generate all of his own pace on the backhand side. That said, when Holger had a chance to really rip the ball and hit it big, he actually loved going into Berrettini's forehand. That's where he was kind of forcing errors. which is great. That's how to play Berrettini. You play slow into his backhand. You play fast into his forehand. Where I'll complicate this is Holger didn't play like this the whole match. It's all about managing the emotions with Rune. It was not like this the whole match. After getting broken in the first set early, so first break of the match, Rune played like an idiot in the next game. I mean, he hit a awful backhand down the line from a low contact point that never had a chance to go in. And then he swung huge on 2 first serve returns, looking to crush it, and he missed both. So, this is kind of, at this point in time, it was early in the match. I didn't know how things were going to play out. I thought to myself, well, here we go again. Because it's one thing not having good shot selection because you haven't developed the awareness or the feel for it. That is much more palatable. It's another thing when the root of your problems is emotion, right? Because that is harder to fix. And then you kind of saw it again when he went down in the second set, where he's playing low percentage tennis. He's constantly, looking for the spectacular and the easy way out. And it's incredible how often it works. In fact, he won the 5-setter in the first round against Zheng Zhizhen. I think what happened there was Holger played low percentage tennis and it went in. Like, if you look at the game he broke, he took huge risks on the return of serve and like 3 of them went in. So anyway, I did see those patches of play in this match where Holger was playing not smart, right? But in the fourth set, Rune was up a break. He got broken. He went right back to work. So there was that moment in the fourth where I was like, that is the ideal mental Holger Rune, where you know how you need to play and you're not allowing for this emotional nosedive after you feel some adversity. I mean, so again, managing the match, that's key. And that's what I have to say about Holger. Berrettini played well in this match, as I said, but there were too many patches of cold play on the forehand. When it's just so important to his game, the forehand. And admittedly, you almost put undue pressure on that shot because you want it to constantly be perfect because it's just how he's going to make his money, especially in a match where the guy's getting his serve back. Holger's returning Matteo's serve. So the forehand had periods of time in this match where it was awesome, but there were also a lot of stretches where it was erratic. And I guess if you're Berrettini and you're going to win this match, it just needs to be awesome the whole time. Another thing I'll say, Matteo had a set point in the fourth set. I hate how he played the first set point. He had a second serve look, and he blocked a forehand return. He chipped it. And then he got a backhand, and he sliced it right through the middle of the court, kind of short, and Rune hit an approach shot to Matteo's backhand and forced an error that way. There was another set point. Rune played some good D, stayed steady in neutral, then hit a slow trade into Berrettini's backhand. He mishit it, unforced error. So it kind of goes back to what we were saying of how Rune was playing, just more solid, more steady, and playing slow into Matteo's backhand. So, second set point, I've got no problem with that. First set point, how are you chipping a second serve return if you're Matteo Berrettini? He has to play an offensive style of tennis. Usually Matteo is so good about that. He knows how he needs to play. And I don't know what happened there. If he got caught with the wrong grip or if he got tight, I don't know what happened there, but he had a second serve and he just chipped it. All right, let me go through some other stuff real quickly. Wind is bad for servers. That was a theme. I thought Tomas Machac did not play his best against Riley Opelka. Just kind of had to grit it out. And he certainly tried to make as many balls as he could, but I just never thought that he was imposing himself in any way. But it's 4-all in the fifth. The wind picks up, and suddenly Opelka just can't make enough first serves, can't be precise enough on his serve. He missed +1 forehands, a pretty standard volley. Suddenly he's broken. Machac wins the match 6-4 in the third. Hurkacz couldn't dominate with his serve today. Pecci Pericard didn't serve very well against Monfils. I just want to make an overall point here. There is a massive hazard for these big servers. Unfortunately, for them, all 4 majors are played outdoors. All 4. And when it gets windy, it's bad news. And I just think we saw a lot of that after a week in United Cup where you saw Hurkacz put up some positive results and like play really competitive against Fritz. You saw Pecci Pericard have a big run. And you saw Opelka have a big run. Just quickly jumping also to the biggest WTA result, and I do want to try to catch more women's matches as the tournament goes on. It's hard in the first 2 rounds because there are so many matches happening. But Osaka over Muchova is the result of the second round, most certainly. And I guess what I want to point out here is, first off, she is carrying herself completely differently this year compared to last year. Like, there is so much more venom in her body language and her emotions. She just kind of was, a lot of the time, just looking like she was going through the motions last year. It's not like you were seeing low effort, but you just weren't seeing a lot of passion out of her. And this year, it's just different. And I'd much rather deal in stuff that's more concrete than like body language, but I'm just telling you what I'm seeing. And it was electric what she did in the latter 2 sets against Muchova. 13 winners out of 33 points won in the second set. And in the third set, 16 winners out of 35 points won for Osaka. So, I mean, she's just kind of, it's raining winners, and she's playing one of the fastest players on tour. Probably not in the tier 1 of speed, but in the tier 2 of speed in Karolina Muchova. So that was super impressive. The serving, the ball striking, the precision, and the power married together when she has time on the ball is ridiculous. And her backhand is also just gloriously difficult to read. Alcaraz, real quick as well. I am very impressed with how clean Alcaraz has been through his first 2 rounds. First of all, given what we had seen from him at the majors last year, yes, even the 2 that he won, there were some moments in his matches where things would turn on him and he'd lose momentum and he'd kind of go into a little free fall for a period of time. And, I don't want to act like it's just Alcaraz. He is playing someone on the other side of the court. But he has 2 very steady, dominant wins here against Shevchenko, 6-1, 7-5, 6-1, and against Yoshi Nishioka, 6-love, 6-1, 6-4. And it's not like I'm just saying it's impressive because Alcaraz struggled with that last year. What about the fact that Carlos changed his serve technique, changed his backhand setup, lower, more compact? I still kind of need to dissect it a little bit more, but he definitely changed his backhand setup again. He's been tinkering with it quite a bit. And he also added 5 grams to the throat of his racket. And he had no lead in tournaments. So no lead ups and all of those changes, and it's that smooth and that clean right away, to me is very impressive. One thing I want to also mention, and I think this was actually a first round, if I'm not mistaken, but Grigor Dimitrov's retirement. And I just want to kind of go through, it was first round against Pissarro, but I didn't address it. So real quick, I just want to say it remains very demoralizing that Dimitrov's body continues to fail him like this at the slams. It is now 3 majors in a row that he has retired. And if you look at the scope of his entire career, even, it is I believe 1 out of every 7 in his career. 1 out of every 7 he has retired. And the full number is 8 retirements, mid-match retirements, in 57 major main draws played. And 6 of those have come since Roland Garros in 2021, which I got from Vonch on Twitter. And again, he got hurt at U.S. Open in 2023 against Zverev. He got hurt at the Australian Open in 2021 against Karatsev. Finished those matches. It just feels like the body won't hold up. So the pattern there is kind of just what I want to get in here, because I think it is illuminating how much of a pattern this is for Grigor. Not one that makes me happy, but a real pattern. One note on Zverev. Didn't see his match against, I'm actually forgetting even who it was against. Second round. Last match on Laver. Oh, yeah, Pedro Martinez. 6-1, 6-4, 6-1. I heard that he averaged 83 miles per hour on his forehand, which would be better, faster than any match he played last season. So just something to note, because the forehand and the trust in that shot to be a weapon, to create damage, that's the number one key for Zverev, and it will continue to be, especially in crunch time, under pressure, if he makes it to the end of the tournament. That's what it's going to be about. So 83 miles per hour, that's quite the number. FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime goes up 2-0 and surrenders that lead and loses the match against Alejandro Davidovich Fokina. This is the second time in the last 3 majors that FAA has blown a 2-love lead. The other one is Kokkinakis at Wimbledon. Felix's career record, this is another match that because of the time I did not see it, but I want to delve into the numbers here. Felix, after winning the first 2 sets in his career, has a record of 17-4. 17 wins, 4 losses. That's an 81% win percentage. Is that good? Is that bad? Well, I wanted to do some research to figure that out. I found a post on Medium from a data scientist who doesn't actually regularly do tennis content, but he did in this one case. His name was Yorgos Askalidis, or Askalidis. And he ran the numbers on 2-0 comebacks for every slam since 1990 through last year's Australian Open. He actually did this right after Sinner came back against Daniil Medvedev, and that was the impetus for him doing this research. So, since 1990 until Australian Open 2024, he collected 1,216 matches, in which case there was a 2-love lead. Any match that there wasn't a 2-love lead, it gets thrown out. But in those matches, 1,216 of them, he found that 7% of players who go down 2-love force a 5th set. And if they do force a 5th set, 55% of those players end up winning the 5th, which is interesting, right? So the odds are totally stacked against you to force a 5th set, but if you do, the odds are actually shifted in your favor just by 5%. But overall, if you put those probabilities together, 3.8% of players who fall down 2-love win the match, which means the tour-wide win percentage for players who go up 2-0 is 96.2. Felix's win percentage is 81%. The average is 96.2. Now, sometimes it's just going to happen. For example, Australian Open 2022. Felix blew a 2-love lead. I remember that match. Medvedev played phenomenal in the last 3 sets. I didn't feel like Felix choked at all. But the Kokkinakis match at Wimbledon, different story. He had easy forehands on match point, multiple occasions, and he got tight. So that was a choke. But when it's happening that often, I think there's something wrong. I think there is something wrong. if you are only 17-4 when you go up 2 sets at majors. Moving on. By the way, before I go too much further, I am recording this very late on Thursday morning, really. It's 6:05 a.m. I have not slept yet. Lerner Tien is up 2-0 on Daniil Medvedev. I obviously can't watch that match right now. It's happening live. I'll probably go to sleep if Tien wins, and I mean, right now it's kind of looking like he will. If Tien wins, I'll have to just watch the match on replay tomorrow. Sinner against School Kate. It's another one I can't really comment on. I was focused on the terrific entertainment that was happening during the vast majority of that match. And the other 2 matches which was Fonseca, Sonego, and Rune Berrettini. Let's hit Djokovic, Faria. Second straight match for Novak where there were stretches of struggles. And this time, it just felt like he couldn't get out of neutral trading with Faria. He was constantly letting his opponent throw the first punch. And I was incredibly impressed by those punches that I'm talking about. Faria's ground game, both wings, shockingly good. I mean, that is a really good power baseline game until his legs went away. And we just see this a lot, right? Underdog comes out looking to redline their offensive game, and the focus and the intensity with the feet is 11 out of 10. So you're going 11 out of 10 intensity because you're playing Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open, and you're a player who's, only really played, I think, 1 tour main draw in your career. So this is at the time, and probably for a long time, the biggest match of your life, the biggest moment of your life. You're 11 out of 10 intensity. You're trying to redline your offense. You can play amazing for a little while, but there's an expiration there. You're not at your base level when you're that, arguably, when you're that intense, when you're that dialed in, particularly if there's just underlying physical vulnerabilities, which there may be with Faria. But, legs just went away, and then Novak could kind of pounce on that. The only other thing with Djokovic, the serve seems to be buoying him constantly. No matter what has happened in these first 2 matches against Basaveretti and Jaime Faria, the serve is there. Lots of damage, lots of aces. It looks really, really good. So that's good news going into the match against Tomas Machac, which I'll do a post-match video of tomorrow. Let's go now to Mensik defeats Ruud. Jakub Mensik was way better. This match did not feel very close to me because Mensik was incredibly, first of all, squirrely on his forehand. Like he was cagey on his forehand for the entire first half of the first set. He was and then he won the first set. But even if you put both sets together, Mensik was unclutch. He was severely unclutch. He was 2 for 12 on break points. Some of those were pretty bad mistakes, although Ruud did serve really well on these break points. But essentially, he's 2 out of 12 break points, and he comes out a set apiece. We're all even. And then, sets 3 and 4, Mensik faces 2 break points, and he doesn't get broken. Not once. And visually, it just looked dominant because of how much it was on Jakub's strings. 62 winners to 30 for Mensik. 62 to 30. This was a great display of power. It was good to see after the shaky start on the forehand. It was good to see how much conviction he ended up hitting off of that wing by the end of the match, especially when he had some time and he was able to kind of set his feet. The pace and the depth was rushing Ruud on a consistent basis. Speaking of rushing, a lot of net rushing for Jakub Mensik. 25 for 37 coming forward. And it was a serving clinic, truly. You might be able to simplify the match, boil it down to it was kind of even from the baseline, but then Mensik just completely and utterly outserved Ruud to the nth degree. You could make that argument, but the way Mensik served, 22 aces, a 20% ace rate over 4 sets, really, really hard to do. And I look at his body, I mean, he's still looking kind of gangly. I didn't know how Mensik would maybe progress physically over the course of the offseason, although, like, I don't know how much of a training block there even was there, or a fitness block there even was there, because Mensik was kind of pretty active, obviously playing the next gen and all that. But that is to say, I can't imagine that serve when he actually gets big, when he gets strong. If that happens, I assume it will. It's already my favorite service motion on tour. In my opinion, the most fluid, efficient, difficult to read service motion on tour. Low toss, same, just great rhythm. Every serve from the same toss. I just think it's a beauty, and it reminds me a lot of Kyrgios's motion. You also have the height of shot dynamic that goes against Casper. I've talked about this before at Wimbledon. I remember, like, his match against Liam Brody. I talked about this a lot when he lost to Liam Brody at Wimbledon. Look, Australian Open, it's another court where Casper's forehand, it's not jumping off the court like he would want it to. So when the ball does jump off the court, when he is injecting the heavy RPM on the ball, it's actually jumping into a comfortable height for a guy in Jakub Mensik who's 6'4" going on 6'5". And when the ball jumps to that comfortable height, which I'll say is like shoulder or just below shoulder, Mensik, who plays with pretty conservative grips, can flatten the ball out from that high contact. It's one of the real strengths of his forehand. I think it struggles more from low contacts, where Mensik usually sometimes can't get the ball up and down with a ton of violence. But from a high contact, he can flatten it out. Backhand, same thing. So he ends up hitting a fast, low, penetrating ball that ends up skidding real low. What happens when Ruud plays low with his extreme grips and his extreme topspin? Well, because the ball's low, he has to lift. He has to lift up heavy topspin, and the cycle repeats because the topspin isn't jumping. It's not effective on this court. That's what I'm seeing. And because Ruud's regular ball isn't as effective, there's tons of overplaying from Casper. You can see he feels like he needs to do so much with the forehand because his regulation ball just isn't really getting it done. But I thought Mensik, it was an offensive assault. Serve, net rushing, power off the ground. Unbelievable performance. Casper was, he was outmatched here, which is weird. But I just think it has to do with the conditions and just Mensik. I'll give a lot of credit to Jakub. So teenager beats Andrei Rublev, top 10 seed. Teenager beats Casper Ruud, top 10 seed. The stat is it's the first time since Wimbledon 2006 that 2 teenagers beat 2 top 10 players, and those 2 teenagers at Wimbledon 2006 were Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray. Sebastian Korda was upset. Happy for Alexander Vukic because he's a guy who keeps improving, and he's deep into his not deep into his 20s, but he's late 20s, and he just keeps getting better, and he's really toiled through every rank of the game quite diligently, I will say. When the ball's in Korda's strike zone, it's great. He's a great ball striker, but a lot of what I saw in that match, and I will admit I didn't see a ton of it, but I saw a good amount of it. His feet are too slow a lot of the time. His feet are not quick enough to get him in the right position. And when the ball isn't in Korda's strike zone, there's a lot of errors when he doesn't get that contact point perfect. And the wind wasn't helping. It's also tough to go up against that crowd. There are a lot of accusations with Korda that he's not mean enough, right? That he doesn't, oops, I just hit the mic. Hopefully that wasn't too loud for you guys. He's not mean enough. He doesn't have fangs, right? And this is the kind of situation where you wonder if that hurts him because he needs to be the villain and the crowd is against him. They're not giving him anything. And that's where you see some players use it as fuel to kind of get mean. And Korda doesn't really get mean in that kind of situation. Since Australian Open quarterfinal in 2022, no third rounds for Korda. So that's 8 majors in a row where he hasn't made, a fourth round, not a third round. 8 majors in a row where he hasn't made a fourth round. He has lost to a lower ranked player in 6 of those 8. So he's not holding seed and losing to a higher ranked player. He is losing in 6 of these 8 occasions to a lower ranked player. In other words, not holding seed. Kokkinakis versus Draper. I saw a lot of this, but then I had to go to sleep before the 5th set. But this was, first of all, shout out to the man who ultimately didn't win the match in Thanasi Kokkinakis because he displayed gladiatorial toughness. His body was clearly in bits, and he just pushed right through it. Unbelievable. He's got a shoulder injury. He's got a thigh injury. And he just wasn't going to really take no for an answer because, I don't know, probably because he's playing in John Cain Arena. And it's the one time a year where he gets the opportunity to do it. And he just did not want to go down without giving it everything. Draper, meanwhile, back-to-back 5-setters, still a little bit hit or miss with the level, although he actually found some really good patches in this match. He's quite good at finding a way. I'm thinking about the U.S. Open in 2023. Similar situation where Draper comes in with no preparation and no expectations, and he makes the 4th round by winning some tough matches. So as fragile as Jack's body is, as susceptible as he is to hot weather, as susceptible, and he's working hard on that, by the way, as susceptible as he is sometimes to nerves. So he has these frailties. He is tough. Like even in the center match at the U.S. Open where he was throwing up all over the place and he was sick as a dog, he was tough. Like he did fight through it. So Kokkinakis, Draper, dogfight, props to both, and Jack ultimately gets through. 3 more matches to hit on. Let's do Hurkacz versus Kecmanovic. Hubie was completely uncompetitive in the baseline exchanges. Unforced errors were 38-12. Second serve points were 38% for Hurkacz, 69% won for Kecmanovic. And what are second serve points? They're neutral rallies. That's what we're looking at if we take the sample size of second serve points and compare it with first serve points where you're getting a lot of bang bang 0 through 4. Speaking of which, 9+ shot rallies, 14-2 Kecmanovic, 14-2. So this was not competitive, this match, in the baseline rallies. Hurkacz got destroyed, and Kecmanovic was extremely consistent, just rock solid, gave nothing. You know how he applies pressure, taking the ball early on the rise, changing direction often. But the consistency was the biggest thing. That's what it was ultimately going to take because on shot tolerance, this was just such a rough go of things for Hurkacz that Kecmanovic's consistency was going to be enough. And by the way, 0 through 4 shot rallies were also close because of that massive unforced error advantage for Kecmanovic. Meanwhile, the Hurkacz forehand, and I'm gonna circle back to Misha, but first, the Hurkacz forehand is still the Hurkacz forehand. If you just take like the second set, for example, Hurkacz gets broken on a sequence of +1 forehand unforced errors off of short block returns, and then he double faults, right? Like you can't miss 2 forehands off of short block returns in one game. Kecmanovic serving for it at 5-4, serving for the match. Oh, sorry, serving for the second set, not the match. Hubie gets to 15-all. He gets into 2 neutral rallies from 15-all, and he hits ugly forehand errors on both neutral rallies. Like the swings themselves looked completely off. Like disjointed, disconnected, weird contact, weird setup, weird follow-through, like just bad swings of the racket. So you don't want to see that because that is obviously almost the ghost in the machine for Hurkacz. And yeah, you still can't really trust that shot, unfortunately. Maybe something will change at some point, but we are still there. And by the way, anytime the ball is deep, Hurkacz can't accelerate. He doesn't accelerate. So I think depth is such a powerful thing against Hurkacz because when you hit the ball deep to his forehand, he massages it, and then you can attack the next one. Kecmanovic, meanwhile, is building quite the Australian Open resume. Quite impressive. He has made the 4th round in Melbourne 3 times now, and he has never made the 4th round. Oh, I'm sorry. He hasn't made the 4th round yet. He's made the 3rd round. Okay. But if he wins his next match, essentially he's made 2 4th rounds and now he pulls off another upset win and to make the 3rd round. So great Australian Open resume. And, now you ask yourself, so why does he start so strong? Because even, remember he had that really big start of 2022. Like not only was he good at the Australian Open, but he was really good in February. And then Sunshine Double, quarterfinal Indian Wells, quarterfinal Miami, played that epic with Alcaraz. There seems to be a thing where Kecmanovic is at his best first few months of the season. And then it kind of fades away. So I don't know. Is it a fitness thing? Because that is something that swirls around Kecmanovic. I've spoken with people and I've heard kind of, I guess when people talk about him as a player, one of the things that gets called into question is the level of fitness. And maybe he wears down as the season goes on because he's not quite at that highest level physically. Maybe. The funny thing also with Kecmanovic is there's this big debate, right? Is he overachieving or underachieving? Nobody seems to know because on one hand, he's a top 50 player without big weapons. Really hard to be a top 50 player without big weapons. On the other hand, you see him play top 20 level tennis sometimes, and now you start to ask, why can't you replicate that more often? So it's an interesting one. Shapovalov Musetti. Really nice match to watch, particularly for the first 2 sets, but it was a straight set win for Lorenzo Musetti. These are both really artful and talented shot makers, but there's a huge difference between the two in the fact that Musetti at this point in time moves so much better, and it allows him to play way more solid. 62 unforced errors in 3 sets from Shapovalov. There are a lot of issues here for Denis. Even though the first 2 sets were really close, there were a lot of issues for Denis. The serve, first of all, needs to be where he builds an advantage over Musetti. Like, if you match these 2 up as players and you think, okay, well, where might Denis have an advantage? It's the first serve that's where it needs to be. But he ended up serving only 58% first serves. He ended up double faulting 15 times in 3 sets. It's just way too much. And he was incredibly predictable on the deuce side. 83% of his serves on the deuce side went down the tee at Musetti's backhand. And I just think at this level, that's just way too predictable. I don't really think that should ever happen unless it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it situation and you're winning all the points. That's not what was happening. His best serving set was the second set. He actually served a lot better in the second set, But then he double faulted on set point at 6-7. So ended on a bitter note. That was the second set tiebreak. Let me talk about both tiebreaks. Scoreline was 7-6, 7-6, 6-2. In the first set tiebreak, it was a very disappointing display from Shapovalov. Very disappointing immaturity, where he goes down 2-love and he kicks the signage on the side of the court and he gets a warning from Damien Dumassois, and rightly so. I mean, he kicked and he kicked equipment on the court. It made a loud thud. It altered the positioning of the advertisement, right? It was worthy of a warning. And Denis spent the next 4 or 5 minutes whining about the warning while playing points. It's not like he stopped play to argue. He was just basically whining in between points as he continues to fall further and further and further behind in this tiebreak. He goes down 5-love or something. So I think Denis kind of has this delusion that umpires are out to get him, and it's unfounded. But more importantly, I mean, there are a lot of aspects to this. First of all, move on. It's a warning. It doesn't mean crap. Just play. I mean, it literally doesn't mean anything. It's just a warning. And also, you deserved a warning for what you did. Also, you went down 2-love in the tiebreak. Why are you kicking things on the court? It's just not the moment in time. And again, I'm okay with displays of frustration, sympathetic to displays of frustration. That's all fine. But you also got to pick your spots. Really? 2-love in the tiebreak? Okay, so that was the first set tiebreak. Second set tiebreak, it was tight, but Shapo made 3 forehand unforced errors that were just footwork. So one of them was a short ball that was low in the midcourt, and he just didn't get down to it with his legs, or more accurately, he pulled up off of it. He came up too early as he sort of uncoiled his legs as he hit this forehand. It was premature. So you could just see that the balance and the center of gravity just wasn't right as he hit that forehand. There was a wide and short one where he didn't move up to the ball and he ended up with a low contact and he missed. So he just needed an extra step closer to the ball. And then there was one right down the center where he didn't make enough space and he got jammed, basically. So it went right down the middle. He took a shuffle to his right, but he didn't go far enough. And it wasn't the ideal contact point. So you look at why are these errors happening for Shapovalov? And in this case, it's just positioning. It's literally just footwork positioning. So I don't mean to bury Musetti in all of this. I thought he played well, very well. But, nothing out of the ordinary. Classic Musetti performance. He did his thing. One thing I was admiring from him is he defends a lot from deep in the court, right? And he slices a lot from defense. Shapovalov did the right thing there by going to the net a lot, which he did in this match. But something I think Musetti does a great job of is make them volley every single time. He's a little bit susceptible to net rushing, but he's going to make you volley. He's going to make you execute. And he's pretty good at keeping that slice defense low when you do approach the net on it as well. Last one. Shelton versus Pablo Carreno Busta. This was another real, kind of Mensik versus Ruud in how lopsided the firepower was, especially with Shelton's forehand against Pablo Carreno Busta's cross-court backhand. It just felt like PCB couldn't hit a backhand cross-court without getting hurt. There was never enough on the ball. And I always felt like this was a huge problem for PCB against Rafa, who Carreno Busta went 0-8 against and never really even played close. And I think this is even exacerbated in conditions or against players who can get it up high on Carreno Busta's backhand, because then he's really not getting enough on it. And Shelton not only does this with the heavy RPM forehand, he does this with his serve. Nobody's serve jumps higher than Shelton's. And this was during the day. So the conditions were a little bit bouncier. There were times where PCB tried to back way up on Shelton's serve to try to let it get lower. And Ben did a really nice job of just drop shotting off of that. Serve plus drop shot. It was kind of money. Shelton was asked after the match what he's improved. And he said, movement, return, backhand. Movement, return, backhand. I loved hearing that because ultimately that's the big three for him to improve the break percentage, which needs to get better. That is the big three. Movement, return, backhand. So let's see. Let's see what ends up happening as he continues and, throughout the season. Is he going to break serve more? Because those are the three things that, the backhand gets exposed in neutral rallies. The return was, always kind of a struggle, which is, of course, how you start a return point, obviously. And the movement was also a problem because, let's face it, if you're going to win first serve return points, you're going to have to defend. You're going to have to cover the court against aggressive plus ones. And Shelton was he's explosive as a mover, but it could get even better. He needs to figure out how to break serve more often. I do kind of think he made an adjustment on his backhand. I'm not positive, but I kind of think he moved his grip over a little bit. I think he's getting more rotation on the ball, more topspin. I don't think he's muscling it as much. Maybe using that outside wrist. In this case, it would be his right wrist. Just a little more right wrist action. And I just feel like there's it's less of a muscly kind of arm-reliant backhand. And I think it's heavier spin. And I think he might have moved the grip over just a hair for more topspin. But I haven't really looked at it side by side. So that could be true, could not be true. There is a technical change that I noticed with one of the players I talked about that I want to make its own separate video. But that will be for another time. I will make a post-match on Djokovic Machac as well. And that'll do it for this second round Australian Open show. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.